Hey, I'm Jake Parker, and today I'm teaching you how to draw with these pens right here. These are just basic pens that you can get pretty easily at any art store. Some of these you can get at your local bank teller. This is just an ordinary ballpoint Bic pen. And then I've got the felt tip pen, the Sharpie marker, and a technical pen here. And I'm excited to show you some of the techniques and tricks that I've learned over the years on how to draw with these pens and make some cool imagery. So let's get started. Okay, first the Bic ballpoint pen. This is what I'm using right here. And as you can see, this thing is your normal plastic pen. But what's cool about this pen is how awesome it is at getting gradients. So I want to get in and teach you how to make some gradients, how to make that light to dark transition. It's pretty seamless. I'm going to show you some of my techniques for that. Alright, the first thing I want you to try to do is dividing your tones into three main tones. And that's not including black and that's not including white. So between white and black you have three separate tones, and we're just going to think about it that way. Those three things, and then you can vary it between those three as much as needed for whatever your drawing is. So I'm going to divide this rectangle into 5 different sections. So here we have black, here we have white. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to feather in this these lines to go from light to dark. And we're going to start with light, and I'm just going to make vertical lines, and I'm just barely putting any pressure on the paper. Okay? I'm just going to run this through all the way to the other end. Alright, now before I vary between these two, I'm going to go in here and now make my dark, my black. So I'm going to push kind of as hard as I can, push into that paper, and just make thick, dark, heavy lines. Okay, now I'm going to cross hatch just a little bit, hatch it, and that's where you put your lines at a little bit of a different angle. So you have lines that go vertical, and then you just have lines that go ever so slightly diagonal. And that right there is how you're going to get your difference in gradients, is 1, pressure, and 2, hatching. Okay, so now let's go in and let's make a mid-tone that's kind of in between this black and this gray right here, this gray. So we're going to go in, we're going to add a little bit more pressure right here. Just going to push a little bit harder and put a hatching line that's just a little bit of a gradient over. Okay, and now that we've done that, we're going to do halfway in between this dark and that dark. Okay, so I'm going to push down a little bit harder. It's still kind of the same, so I'm just going to go over it one more time at a little bit of a different angle. And now you can see here we've got our white, we've got our black, we've got these nice 3 shades in between. Okay, now this applies to a cube. I'm just going to draw a cube, and what's going on here is your white is going to be everything around it. Your black is going to be the shadow. And then we're going to call these your A, B, and C lights or gradients, whatever. We're going to do our A up at the top, we're going to B in the front, and we're going to do our C back here. Let's put in our black shadow first. Push down really hard. Okay, we've got our black shadow. Now we're going to go up and do the A and just ever so lightly butterfly kiss. That's the term I want to use for this. Your pen tip should be no heavier than a butterfly kiss to get that lighter part. Alright, now we're going to do our B, which is a little bit darker. And now we're going to do our C, which is like the B. We'll do the same pressure that we did for the B, And then we're going to use that same amount of pressure and just hatch it, make that line just a little bit more at an angle. And now we've got our 3-toned cube here. I'm going to make this shadow a little bit darker. And that's how you apply this gradient to a cube. Let's try it to really quickly to a ball, a sphere. Alright, I'm just going to do the butterfly kiss. That's the amount of pressure. Then I'm going to go in with my B pressure, which is a little bit more pressure. Okay, now I'm going to go in and add my black to make this shadow, dark shadow. And then my C, I'm just going to push a little bit harder and get it darker there. And so you can see I'm applying these, all of these to this shape, to this shape. Let's do one more shape. Okay, let's do a cylinder. Okay, butterfly kiss first, do that level A, just ever so lightly. Now go in and add your B, level darkness. And get your C going in there a little bit more, push down a little bit harder. Just make that gradient nice and smooth between them, just work it a little bit. Okay, and then add your black down here. And that's how you get your cylinder. So the lighting is hitting you this side, it's hitting this side on the sphere. And that's how you're getting it. Now let's apply this to an actual drawing of a character. Just going to lightly sketch in some of his features here. You'll see with Frankenstein, what's great about him is he's basically a cylinder with all these little extra bits added onto him. So there's my basic Frankenstein shape. Okay, now I'm going to just start going in and filling in some of the shadowed areas first with kind of a mid-tone level that I'm doing here. Mid-tone level of a tone. Put a shadow underneath his chin there. Okay, we'll darken in the hair. And we're going to leave the top of his head kind of light because we're imagining the light coming down from that point. Okay, so if the light's coming from there, then this part is going to be getting less light. So I'm just going to work in a lighter tone right there to find that shape. And then we're going to want these eyebrows to have an edge, or this eyebrow have an edge to it too, so it looks like it's curving under. And then we're going to get really dark in here where the light is not hitting in these corners. We can have a little bit of his eye showing there too in the shadow. Okay, now the nose is sticking out, so it's going to have a lot of light. These cheeks are going to have a lot of light, but then under here, as it turns away, we're not going to have very much light. The upper lip is going to have a lot of light because it's sticking out. And then we're going to have this chin kind of roll under like that. And in order to make that stick out farther, we're going to make a darker shadow underneath that chin. All right, there's our Frankenstein head. Maybe we'll have some teeth kind of showing through here, like that. There we go. I like that already. Oh, let's make the nose shadow a little bit darker too. There we go. All right, and that's how to use a ballpoint pen, how to use a gradient and to get a gradient, and then how it applies to an actual drawing. Hope you learned something from that. All right, now let's talk about technical pens, and what I have here are 3 different size technical pens, and these are all made by Zig. These are their Mangaka pens. Sakura makes a really good technical pen. Copic makes a pretty good technical pen. These are a little bit more expensive, but the components are replaceable. So you can order new ink, slide in the back there. You can order new tips. These tips come off, and you just keep this nice metal case. But for these kinds of pens, and for many of these, they're just disposable. You use up the ink, and then you could toss the pen. I've tried to refill the inks in these, and it doesn't quite work. So take those things into account as you're buying pens. The tips are all pretty much the same, but there's a little bit of a slight variation between them. So you're going to have to test out some of these pens and see what exactly works for you and what you like the best. But these Zig pens are pretty good. Now the 3 sizes I have are a 1, a 5, and an 8. And the reason for that is you get different line widths with each one. So you can see there's the 1. Here's the 5, and here's the 8. You can see how thick, medium, small. They also come in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 8. So it depends on what you're doing and what you're drawing, and what your needs are as to what sizes you're gonna use. But for today, we're just gonna use these 3 sizes, and I'm gonna show you how to make graceful curving lines, straight lines, and using these pens together to get those effects. Almost can look like a brush pen effect, but with much more control. And also, I'm going to apply that to a character drawing. So let's get right down into it. Okay, so let's say you want to make a curve. So what you can do is start off with your largest pen. Okay, so I'm gonna go in here and I'm just gonna do an S shape, like that. All right, and you can see here as I push down, it gets a little bit thicker here, a little bit thinner there. I'm gonna go over that line again, just a little bit. You can see I made it just a little bit thicker there. Now what I can do is take my size 1, and I can go in here and taper off the tip of that even more. So you can see how tight that tip can get. I'm going to do it on this end as well. Okay, and then I can come in here and clean up some of these edges with this tiny size 1 pen. There we go. Now another way to do it is to take your size 1 pen, and you can do your curve first, and then you can go in and add a second line for how big you want that taper off to go, how thick you want it and how thin you want it. Once you've got that, then you can go in with your size 5 and fill it in. Okay. Okay, now this is how I'd use the technical pens to do something less curvy and it has more straight lines to it. So let's say we're drawing a camera. Okay, let's do it like a point and shoot camera. So what I'm going to do is use this to draw the contour lines to the camera. And I'm going to go in there and add the edges and little details and whatnot. Something like that. Okay. you could see here all of these line widths are pretty much the same. What I want to do now is grab my thick size 8 pen and go in and vary the line width on some of these. So I'm just going to add a bigger contour line to the outside of this. So anything that sort of sticks out away from the edge of something, I want a thick line. Now you can see I've got a much more dynamic image because I've got thinner lines inside and thicker lines on the outside. Now I can take my size 1 and go in there and add little bits of like detail and texture. So I'm going to add that there. I'm going to add a thinner line going in this way, around here like that. Maybe like a panel or something like that. And you can even go in and add some hatching with this smaller pen, smaller tip pen. Okay, so there we go. That's how you'd use these three together for something really technical. Now I'm going to show you how I use it to do a character. I'm going to do my character from the graphic novel that I'm working on, Skyheart. I'm going to draw the character Wake. I'm going to use the 5 first to lay in all the features. Okay, so Wake, you know what, we're going to actually use the 1 to sketch him first, just lightly get these shapes in there. Some of these landmarks. Okay, now that I got my landmarks in there, I'm going to take my 5, and I've drawn this character a bunch, so I kind of know what I'm doing when I draw him. So otherwise, if it was a character I wasn't familiar with, I'd probably sketch things out a little bit more. So you can see here, I'm adding now all the major contour lines that make up this character. There's his face. Nothing really, there's nothing here that's really standing out above the rest of it because the line width is all the same. And the reason you want to have separate line widths is to give emphasis to certain areas and to have certain things pop and other things to sort of recede or sit back. So now that I've got that in there with all the size 5 pen, all those size 5 lines, I'm going to take my 8, and just like I did with the camera, I'm going to make some nice tapered lines for this character. So it's going to be thicker around these edges, and it's going to get thinner here, and then maybe thicker right there. Especially this part that overlaps right here. Okay, I want a little bit thicker right here, and thicker as we get down to the chin to emphasize that point there. Okay, now I'm going to come up here. I'm going to build up this line there and make these lines really taper out so that they get thicker on one end and really thin on the other ends. I'm going to do it with the nose. And the eyes right there. And then the bottom part of his bandana that wraps around like that. Okay. Now I'm going to do the ears. I'm going to have it be a little bit thinner at the ends and thicker at the part where it attaches to the head. Okay, there we go. And then I can go in with the size 1, and now I can actually add a little bit of just some hatching right here, some lines to vary the tone of this. Okay, and I'm going to go in and do a little bit of that for his eyebrows and his sideburns. And we're going to add a little bit on the top of the ears here too, just to imply that it's a darker fur that's covering the back of the ears than the inside of the ears. Alright, and that's how I would do a character with these technical pens, and showing you how I use different sizes together to get really controlled, smooth line work. Okay, now let's talk about the Sharpie. This is just a normal Sharpie. Actually, this is a modified, not a normal Sharpie, because it does have a fine tip on one end and the normal Sharpie tip on the other end. And I want to show how you can use this Sharpie to really good effect by leveraging its dark black abilities and using that to create shadows. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, if we have, you know, the gradient bar that I did from the first ballpoint pen exercise, you have white here, you have black here, and then these three shades, when you're drawing with the Sharpie, these three shades either go one way or the other. So basically everything from this point onward is going to be white, and everything from this point that way is going to be black. And that's how you got to think of your drawings and the lighting when you're drawing with the Sharpie. Okay, so let's apply that to the cube. Okay, if you're drawing a cube with a Sharpie, you want to add shadow to it. So you're going to add your shadow in the back here. You're going to fill that in. Alright, and so this is going to be your A, your B, and your C lights. And if this is C, B, and A, then this one's clearly going to be white. Your B could go either way. It could go black or white. I think for this one we're going to leave it black, and then our C definitely is black. So we're just going to color that in black right there. And now you've got your cube done simply with the Sharpie, and that's why this tool is really powerful, because you could bust things out a lot faster just by narrowing it down to black and white. Let's do a sphere. Okay, so we're going to have our shadow right there, and then again we've got this gradient happened with the ballpoint pen, but here it needs to go one way or the other. So all we're going to do is do that. And there is our sphere. Now let's do a cylinder. And it's pretty much the same thing here. Just going to add a line right there and call it good. Put that shadow on the back. Now, if you do have one of these Sharpies with the finer tips, and sometimes these come in their own pen as well, you can go in and you can add little lines there to get a half tone going, and maybe you hatch it just a little bit. You just work that edge. Okay, that's how you can get a little bit of a gradient there. Another thing you can do is, instead of doing little hatching lines, you can do little triangles. That kind of gets the same effect going there as well. All right, so let's apply this to drawing an actual drawing. I want to do a dinosaur or a monster or something. So, all right, I'm going to draw a dinosaur, and I've got this dinosaur design somewhat memorized because I've drawn it so many times over the years. So I'm just going to go right into it. But you know, if you need to sketch first before you go in with Sharpie, that's fine. I'm just blocking in major landmarks here first. The neck, how it attaches to the head there. And the eyebrows here and the teeth. Now I'm gonna, or not the teeth, but the mouth. Now I'm gonna add the teeth. Okay, now this part down here would be in various shades of gray, different gradients, but I'm gonna drop it straight to black and just fill in that section right there with all shadow. Okay, now I'm gonna add eyebrows, or the top of the eyes, and the eye itself, and then sort of this nasal shelf right there, nostrils, and then I'm going to add in just some textures up here of this dinosaur being scarred and muscular and stuff. Okay, now where can we add more shadow? Could probably get in deep right here. Okay, could probably do a little bit right there, make those a little bit darker, and then right here you can add a little bit of shadow right there, and maybe even just a pinch around each of these teeth to imply that they're coming under the lip there. All right, little ear hole right there. Add some scales in the back here. And then let's put a shadow right under the neck, right here as well. All right, and that is pretty much how I would apply this sort of pen work with the Sharpie to one of my drawings of a monster there. Dinosaur thing. Okay. All right, lastly, we're going to talk about the felt tip pen and how to use that. And I have two different felt tips here, and you can see that they're different levels of sharpness. You know, one's a little bit more pointier than the other. I don't know if you can tell that there. Basically what a felt tip is the tip is made out of a felt-like substance. It's just some sort of porous material that holds its shape fairly well. The problem with felt tips is if you use them, after you use them a little while, those tips do wear down and they get a little bit duller. And so that's one of the frustrating things for me. That's why I like using a brush pen a little bit better. But the nice thing is while those tips last, you can get really good, nice lines that you can carve out of it. So, okay, what I'm going to do is just show you some of the strokes and line work that I can get with this thing. So let's try and make that S shape that we did with the technical pens and see what we can do with the felt tip pen here. I'm going to lightly push down and then push harder and then take it off. You can see there you get nice thins and thicks with that. Now because it's a felt tip, it is going to get a little feathery in places there, and maybe you like that texture, and I think it kind of looks cool. But yeah, you can see how you can get really thick and really thin. It's a nice, fun pen to use. That's why I like them, because of that variance in line that you can get there, and it's still pretty controlled. It doesn't get out of hand. Okay, so that is the curved lines. Okay, now I'm going to do some straight lines. I'm just going to pull these things down towards me and push and then release some of that pressure to get a tapered line to it. Do that again. Okay, you can see how you still have pretty good control with these, but as the pen picks up and lightens itself, you do get these edges get a little furry, or there's some variance of the line there, which again is maybe a texture that you like. Now let's just do some little smaller marks. If you want to add texture to things, you can see what you get with this pen. Doing some straight lines. Let's try hatching. And to get some of these, you really just barely have to press it onto the paper. You just barely have to touch it. All right, so these are kind of markings that you want to practice and get good at with the felt tip pen. And now I'm going to show you how I apply this stuff to drawing a face. All right, I am going to sketch this face out first, so I'm not sure what I'm doing here. Let's do a female. Maybe we'll have her hair getting like pulled back into a bun. Some loose pieces in places. Big eyes. All right, I got my face sketched out. Now I'm going to use the felt tip pen to start blocking in some of these major line points. So I'm going to start with the ear. Gets a little bit thicker around the edges and thinner as we get to where it attaches. The jaw line's going to be thin at first and then gets thicker down here. I'm going to make that cheekbone a little bit thicker too, and then bring it up under there. Okay. I'm just going to draw the back of her hair right there as it attaches to the neck and bring that neckline down there. We're going to have a little bit of shadow underneath there to imply some lighting. Okay, now let's do the eyebrows. Just lightly feather those in. Okay. And again, I was just barely touching the paper there with the tip of the pen. Now let's draw the top of the eye as it comes down here. Draw the iris and the pupil. We're going to put a little bit of shadow in there. Okay, we're going to give her some eyelashes and just add another line there. Okay, now let's do the nose. Just have a little nostril right there. Okay, let's do the other eye. We're going to have that eyelash coming off that way and draw the other pupil and iris. Fill that in. Okay, and now the mouth. These features, the lips, the eyes, you just barely have to touch in order to get the marks. Otherwise, if you're too ham-fisted, you're going to make marks that that don't really work. They're going to be too heavy for these features, especially when you're drawing delicate features of the face. Okay, ears. All right, now let's start doing the hair, and this is, I think, where the felt tip pen shows its strength. So we're going to draw this hair getting pulled back into this bun, and hair is always darker where it attaches to the head, and then darker where it bunches up as it's gathered together. If you're wondering where to put the shine in a hair, it usually goes around the middle, and the edges are darker. Okay, so let's draw these bangs. Come down here like this. Again, darker at the edges and shinier in the middle. You can see this felt tip pen is just doing everything I want it to do, and it's so perfect for this. Imagine doing all these kind of lines with the technical pens. Not so much. But I wouldn't want to use this pen, this felt tip pen, to do a technical drawing. I wouldn't want to use it to draw that camera. So depending on what you're drawing really makes you decide what pen you're going to want to use. Alright, I think that's pretty much it. Well, maybe let's have a few pieces coming down here. We can have a messy bun, something like that. Okay, maybe one loose hair coming down like that. All right, and there's our how to draw a face. There's our character design there, how to draw a face with the felt tip pen. All right, thanks for joining me today. I hope you learned something, and happy inking. Bye-bye.